The Sentinel is known to be reliable, fearless, disciplined, consistent, courageous, motivated, and skillful.
So do what you feel passionate about. Take chances.
All these qualities start from the mind. Your mind can be your worst enemy or your most powerful weapon.
The world becomes your library to help you to become better at your craft.
Is this the dagger?
Learn how to achieve greatness and tap into the Sentinel mindset.
Well, good morning, everyone. Listening right now, we have a very special guest. Now, we are at the Blue Line Expo, and, I've had a chance to connect with a gentleman right now who goes by the name of Brian Lass.
It's a name that I was given. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what I'm going to say is this. Brian, and I'm learning about you, but I saw your presentation a little bit, is someone that I would call you a personality. Like, you are outgoing, you capture the room's audience.
Appreciate that.
Okay?
Thank you.
And it seems to me you're also very passionate about what you do.
Absolutely.
What does he do? So Brian Lass is currently a sergeant special constable with the Toronto Community Housing, and he's the former provincial prosecutor with GO Transit Metrolinx. In addition to this, 16 plus years experience in the field of law enforcement, Brian is also actively licensed paralegal with the Law Society of Ontario. In addition to that, we're going to find out some more things about Brian, okay? And why his voice sounds so good on the mic.
There we go. Yeah, sure.
But one of the things that we talked about very, very briefly, which I wanted to kind of put some exposure, is, first of all, leadership.
Absolutely.
And how to get there. There's this Gavin DeBecker, which is a protection group in the U.S.
Yep.
They say we don't look for an average person, we look for leaders.
Sure.
Okay, which it really resonated with me, because in our organization, Brian, we feel that everyone should aspire to be in leadership.
Absolutely.
First of all, what does leadership mean to you?
So it's interesting you say that, because some people think that you need to be, the CEO of Microsoft to be considered a leader. No, as long as you basically are cognizant to take care of the person to the left and to the right of you, you're a leader. There's something to be said, in fact, from people who lead from the front lines. I mean, there's people in the law enforcement profession, they just want to be in the front lines. They have no interest in putting a set of chevrons on their shoulder or anything the like. But for me, what I've come to learn firsthand for certain, what it boils down to, and I will say I'm a huge fan of this leadership guru named Simon Sinek. I don't know if any of you have heard of him, but the guy that wears the same purple button down in his glasses in every video, like the guy next door.
Brian, I went to New York, so Mike told me about Simon Sinek about 4 years ago.
Absolutely.
He goes, you have to go to his conference to find out your why.
Yeah. Absolutely,
and I'm glad that that's something you said.
Oh no, 100%. But
now I like you even more.
but I will tell you, and certainly the point I'm trying to arrive at, his whole thing is about leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. And I can't tell you how much that resonates with me, not only because for certain it's the truth, but based on my own experiences. And even I'll tell you, as recent as 4 years ago, when I made the transition, at least in the special constable or policing type world, I guess, to boil down to it, so to speak, for lack of a better description.
For sure.
Making that transition from frontline to now a sergeant role to the realm of management, perceivable leadership role. I can't tell you how, and I'm very transparent about this, where you may otherwise think, no, it's about citing peculiar sections of the Provincial Offences Act and micromanaging. No, I can't tell you how badly I fell on my face, but rightly so, because I'll tell you it was my greatest triumph, my greatest learning experience, to pick myself up, brush myself off, and say, oh yeah, there really is this thing called leadership. I should learn about it because of this entity. And that's when I came upon Simon Sinek's, and even as more recently having done it's actually an executive program in organizational leadership through Harvard Business School. Mm-hmm. And they talk about leading at scale and scope and leading through other leaders. So I guess the long-winded, what I'm trying to say, it really is very much a discipline, but what it all boils down to is quite simply taking care of your people. It's very different than that frontline tactical sort of mindset.
No, that's
right?
good. Okay, let's talk about falling on your face. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Let's have at her.
So I think it's important for people to understand what exactly. So does that mean that when you came into this role of leadership, that you thought it was something different than what you know now?
110%. And I'll tell you, and again, I'm very transparent about this. So one of my first endeavors and first putting on a pair of chevrons and where I am right now 4 years ago, I was placed as part of a summer initiative. It's a very high needs community downtown Toronto, and put in charge of a fantastic group of officers, but basically being conferred as their supervisor. And I can't tell you how wrong I got it. I arrived there thinking, okay, you know what, I was a prosecutor and law enforcement, so I'm just going to, pick every spot I can to just say, oh, this was wrong and you should have done this, and not being encouraging, not even as an aside, forging connections or relationships, getting to know my people. And I will say as an aside, what I've come to learn for certain, and I don't know if I want to jump the gun here or not, but inevitably, and it's interesting because I know I mentioned I did that program at Harvard, they talk about when you come into a new perceivable leadership role, we'll just call it, right? You should put your mind to what I've come to learn is the 3 C's, or the 3 imperatives of realizing any new leadership role, and they're connections, competency, and credibility. So ergo, number 1, get to know your people. Sit down. Tell me the good, the bad, the ugly. Tell me about you. Tell me what you do outside of this place. Let's not even talk about the place.
Yes.
Really forge those relationships, and I'll tell you where I am present day in my role. I've been very, very cognizant to do that, and I have absolutely the most amazing group of people who I get along with. They're the utmost professionals. We have the most fantastic relationships, but that's because I started with this people-first approach. So I know I got a little bit off track there.
Servant leadership, basically.
100%. Now, that being said, and it's interesting you mentioned servant leadership, because and I know our conversation's taking different arteries here. So,
Yeah.
but 100%, what I've come to learn, there are distinctively different disciplines in leadership, or different styles of leadership. Because I'll be honest with you, in my trials and tribulations, I've had some people be of the notion, why are we worrying about this study of leadership? It's not a study. Just be nice to people and don't be a dink kind of thing. No, there's servant leadership. But at the end of the day, I would say is the pavement that solidifies all my other, styles of leadership.
Yes.
So, for example, visionary leadership, which in its quintessential sense would be, what's the light at the end of the tunnel from the organizational standpoint, tie the work everyone's doing every single day to the actual outcome. So what you're doing today, here's how it directly translates in what we're trying to do. But even more than that, one step further that I've come to learn is the light at the end of the tunnel for the individual. What are your goals? What are your aspirations? How can I help you to get there, you personally, still maybe with the organizational direction, vision, identity in mind, but speaking at that individual level. Then we have innovative leadership, where we're trying to, for example, me with my PowerPoints with stupid, videos and cartoons, whatever, right?
Right.
And and the list goes on and on, right? So it really is a discipline, and again, not necessarily every single approach will work for everyone.
No.
So sometimes it's a difference between motivating versus inspiring, and all the like. So I guess the short version I've come to learn, it really is this whole other world that I'm only scratching the surface of. But luckily, I've come upon it. And like I said, to come full circle here, my greatest living lesson has been arriving where I am, and the first thing doing literally just falling flat
Okay,
flat out of my face.
I wanted to ask you, that's great. I mean, you shared a lot of really key things there. Leadership, you also said along with it being servant leadership,
Yep.
you also help people find their why.
No,
You're trying to field and get an idea why
absolutely.
do they show up
100%.
every day in a really tough environment? Toronto community housing
Yeah.
is okay. We all know it pretty well
absolutely.
in our own way, and some of the people, that's not an easy job.
Nope.
Okay, can you give us an idea, because knowing that space, how do you prepare people in their mindset when they're not ready for it? Let's just imagine. Secondly, when they come face to face with the elements within those environments, and how do you encourage them to get past that?
Absolutely. So I'll tell you for myself, and maybe just even as a preamble, the work that our officers are doing, the community safety units. So it's a special constable agency, a level 2 law enforcement agency. We exist by virtue of a memorandum of understanding with the Toronto Police Service, and our officers, I believe we have in and around 100 uniformed special constables conferred with peace officer powers on in relation to Toronto housing property. So just for some perspective, if you will, we're the second largest socialized housing provider in North America.
Wow.
2,230 plus buildings, 110,000 tenants that we know about. And I will tell you, the job that our officers do in forging relationships, and for me, really that's what it comes down to, and they do an amazing job of that, and it's led to so many proactive endeavors thereof. But I would also be lying, and this is me just speaking, not necessarily on the behalf of housing, but me just sort of Brian Lass on my own purview. I tell you, my head just about spin when I was first introduced to some of the environments the officers are walking on. Now, granted, it's become my new normal to use a very cliche term, whatever that means. But I would suggest that, and much like I say in many of our career presentations for colleges and all the like, as far as I'm concerned, it's undoubtedly one of the most dynamic, challenging, awe-inspiring of environments. Why I say awe-inspiring is because of what our officers are walking into, what they're seeing and dealing with, and they do such an immaculate job of really rising to the occasion and really portraying that, front door or community-based policing model, the people of the police, the police are the people. Again, we're special constables, not police, but still in the same spirit, right? So,
and how's that happen? Let me ask you. So you're saying in very difficult environments, they've been effective. You've directly led, you've directly developed and helped people on the back end to make these adjustments. How have they been effective? We bring it up because, police comes under high scrutiny. People who work in protection, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
Was it just that you guys had great SOPs, everyone memorized them, and yeah?
You know what? And I'll be very, very brash, and I don't think it's not necessarily any sort of secret as to some of the unfortunate events that are tied to the community. Special constables, just for for the purview of all your listeners and viewers. We're not equipped with a gun. We're not equipped with a taser. We have a baton, pepper spray, and handcuffs. So to be quite honest, if you don't learn very quickly how to forge relationships, how to talk to people, how to be de-escalative, we're not running in there to ramp things up. We're here to de-escalate it. Some very bad things can happen if you perhaps don't otherwise to learn it. Now, and again, to your earlier point, just a question about, how can you perhaps otherwise motivate or inspire or things of that nature. There's so many... I'll just speak to my own experiences. There's so many different scenarios that arise just based on, again, this people-first approach. Everyone's different. They have different interests. So for such example, one officer may want to take more of an investigative approach and may want a supervisor to really solidify their footing and be supportive that, hey, I'm going to give you the time to sit down and watch CCTV, and maybe there's something bigger going on. Other people may, like me, they're, legal nerds and want to learn more about rules of law, and I want to set the environment for them, and maybe I'll pass on other assignments or whatnot from courses I've done to them, and the list goes on and on. So I think it really, again, to that idea of connections, knowing your people, know where their intrigue and interests lie. If you think something may otherwise be off, that's Joe for such example, and I know Joe maybe has a newborn baby and whatever the case is, so maybe there's something more going on. So Again, for me, it really boils down to knowing the people, knowing what their light at the end of the tunnel is, knowing about them, and knowing how I can best help them based on their own specificities, really, right?
Yeah,
now amazing. Now, again, to do and perform something difficult. Again, you have great insight in it, working with these teams. I think what's awesome, we found that sometimes the most difficult environments produces the most beautiful of people.
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't that odd, right?
110%.
Yeah, the notion might be that, oh man, everyone's jaded, but you, for some reason, why do you think that happens?
That's a very good question.
Because I'm just thinking.
Now, are you asking more in the context of, let's say, persons who are actually doing the job? Are you talking from a frontline perspective, or?
Yeah, mostly from a frontline perspective. So someone who because I'll give you an example. We had a gentleman, part of our team, who, when he worked into healthcare, he didn't want to go into healthcare. Yeah. And he said it changed his life. Yeah. And he saw some of the worst situations that you can imagine.
And it made him a better person.
He basically said the humanity deep within it required it of him out of necessity.
Sure.
It wasn't just like, hey man, you had too much to drink. Come on. Yeah. It took so much more of him. Okay. Sure. So give me an idea, because not that we know a lot of people that are in protection that would still shy away from Toronto community housing based on just the stigma, based on the fact of, because we don't have a gun. You're telling me I got to do this job and I don't have this force multiplier, right? Okay, so they just would love your insight on that in terms of I know because you obviously are looking for great people, and you've had great people.
We have great people, absolutely.
Yeah, you have great people, yeah.
Yeah. You know what, that's a tough question to answer, because again, just the notion that I think at some, to speak maybe in terms of a root cause, if you will, I would say a lot of people that go into law enforcement, it's in essence to have some kind of notion they want to help, they want to give back. Certainly, speaking perhaps to our higher needs communities, there's that element that, you're there and you're building relationships. Plausibly, that's what you're doing. So maybe that's the intrigue. But I'll tell you, for us, it could be a myriad of reasons. I mean, not to preclude that absolutely you can, and there are persons that have, had very fulsome 30-plus year careers with us. They've done amazing stuff. They've done stuff that the police, some people who've done a 35-year with the police would never in a million years have seen or done, depending on where they're stationed. Mm-hmm. But that being said, on the other side, there's people who do come to us somewhat as a stepping stone. It's not, I could speak very, very, in the interest of transparency, because it's just a reality with any special constable agency, right? Yeah. And we're changing that. A lot of people are seeking us for long-term careers, but, is someone perhaps looking to us just to gain that experience, because I'll tell you, and again, when I go to present to colleges, some of the scenarios our persons are running into, if they were to go into a policing interview and be asked, name me a time when you dealt with X, Y, and Z. Well, if you could start talking about responding to homicides and shootings, and I identified the shooter on video and he was extradited from California, you start going into that.
Yes.
They know this is a person who's seen it, done it. They know exactly what they're getting into.
Transferable scenario skills.
Absolutely, and not just thinking, oh, it's going to be like what I see on TV. They've been
know,
it. They fully appreciate what's going on.
Yeah.
Right.
So that. And
Yeah.
everything in between, really, right? So
Yeah.
Look,
Okay,
man,
amazing.
that's really good. Let's close off with this. Simon Sinek has a quote.
yeah,
Many of them. One of them
Absolutely.
is, he goes, don't do business with people that want what you have,
yeah,
That need what you have.
need what you have. Do business with people that believe what you believe.
absolutely.
What's your thoughts on that?
It's insightful, much like everything it says. And I'll tell you. I mean, look, I'll be very, very transparent, and it's interesting you say that as far as people being of the same purview. And
Yeah.
the reality is, at least what I'm finding, and certainly how you and I know each other is by LinkedIn. And
Yes.
I've rightly admit that I've slather LinkedIn with posts and articles and videos,
Right.
and the more aspirational you are, the more side endeavors, the more seemingly the wheels are spinning and you're going progressive. The unfortunate reality is the more that certain person's sense of security, speaking of security, may depend on your stagnation. So you may not tend to have as many fans as you did when you were the frontline unionized brother and sisterhood.
Right.
So I tend to tune that noise out, and like you said, you will come to find in certain situations, like in any predicament, who your actual friends are and whatnot, and you want to be of people of the same purview who are more cheering for you instead of the opposition, if you will. And these are the people that, although it may be a smaller knit group, but you'll cheer for each other, you'll help each other along. You'll say, hey, did you see X, Y, and Z course? Maybe
Yes.
it'll help you where you're going. And
Yes.
that's all you can really do is just tune. There'll always be noise. We live in a very, very noisy world.
Hence right now, there's a lot of noise. There's some tearing down going on around us.
Absolutely,
Good
right?
timing.
So that's I mean, absolutely. People who perhaps you have shared vision with, as opposed to anything of the opposite.
No, that's great. I want to ask you maybe one last question before this house falls down
yeah,
here.
absolutely.
Because we're so close to law enforcement and what it is. I would love your opinion. Open opinion. Don't be nice, okay? But
And I will just say, because I don't
Yeah.
know where this question is going, this is Brian Lass answering not on the behalf of my employers, past, present, or future, but go ahead.
I love that disclaimer. No, like in the best light, in a hopeful world, where do you see law enforcement? Where does it need to grow? Okay, what do you think it could really be? We have this little belief that it could be a really respected profession.
Of course.
We also believe that also in private security, that the nobility of being a protector is something that should be honored and really appreciated by the public. Not like as an entitlement, just for them to understand it a little bit more and be like, this is a great thing. So maybe that family says, no, you don't just have to be like a programmer to make a lot of money. Like, you can be a protector. Yeah,
That's it, yeah.
Maybe that's the name of the podcast
Absolutely.
here. Okay,
The protector,
right?
sure.
Yeah. Okay. And so I kind of wanted to get. Because you know the world. You work really closely with law enforcement as
Sure.
well. What is law enforcement in the future like? What do you see for it in the best light?
That's a good question. I mean, I think anyone would be hard pressed to say that. Obviously, we're in the age of technology, or maybe well into the age of technology. So, do we see more technological advances? Does that work in favor or against? I don't know. I mean, we can certainly argue both sides of the fence, but you know what? I mean,
So how about this? I'll narrow it down to the people.
yeah.
To that crop that's going to walk into it for in the next decade.
For sure.
To all those people, the tens of thousands of them. What is it that you'd say to them about like what this will require of them? Okay.
Interesting. Okay. What a loaded question. You guys are putting me on the hot seat here.
Yeah.
No, you know what? I mean, I guess at the end of the day, you can ask, why would anyone have the intrigue in getting into this world at all?
That's a
Again,
good question.
right?
Yeah, that's valid.
Which I would suggest, much like I did earlier, at its root cause, potentially to give back, to help, but that can mean many different things. And as people get into the profession, they see that I'm helping, but maybe not in the way that I thought I would be now that I'm doing the role. So
That's good.
I do think that, and again, I can only speak to myself and presenting to colleges and all the like, that, I try to bring as much reality and stories, sometimes horror stories, if you will, from my trials and tribulations to the forefront to say, hey, here's what it really is. But I'll tell you, much like when I arrived at housing and seeing some of the things I saw, you hear the stories, but until you're in the thick of it, the sights, the sounds, the smells, you don't have full appreciation for what's going on. I mean, I like once upon a time when I got into this whole world, in my very interim phases, I was an auxiliary officer with York Regional Police, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I'm going to go on ride-alongs every Saturday night. And so I'm not going to go to the club. And literally, that's what I did. But I'll tell you, you're out there and, someone gets an impaired, and then you're sitting in the station watching them do paperwork for literally the entire rest of their shift. So it's a very different perspective. So, I mean, maybe, and I don't want to say we're not already doing a good job because I'm speaking in such general terms. I mean, portraying more realities of really what it is you're doing, some of the opportunity that lies. There's so many different angles that could be explored. So it's such a big, huge open question. I don't think I could give like a distinct answer.
But you know what I got from it?
What's that?
Know what you're walking into.
Well, absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Know what you're walking into.
Yeah. And I think that's with anything. But again, at the end of the day, I mean, you think of someone, wants to become a neurosurgeon. You go through all the schooling, and then they're there, and they've got someone's head open, and like, oh my God, this person could die, and what am I doing? It could be said for anything. Right?
You know, I think it'd be good. I mean, it's like the person who says, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a doctor. At the sight of a paper cut, they faint.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Okay, so I think that's great advice, though.
Yeah.
Just the practicality.
And you know what? And interestingly enough, I mean, some people on the complete opposition side, some people may think never in a million years it could be cut out for that. They're put in the predicament. They see how they can rise to the occasion, and they're the ones, hero, whatever the case is,
and flourish in it.
And they otherwise had no idea, right? So I mean, you never really know till you try, I suppose, right?
Oh, that's good.
I was just about to say that. I think that's probably a great way to end. I mean, we need more people to maybe try out this, to walk in these circles. I mean, there's a staffing shortage all over the world.
No, absolutely. Everyone's hiring.
Everyone's and everyone's hiring. And if you're looking for work, I think, for anyone listening, if you know good people, this work needs good people.
Exactly.
Yeah. But the one thing I will say, though, and it's interesting you raise that, so maybe I'll add this thought. This is a recent sort of comparison that I came up with when so as an aside, and they're here somewhere, but TNT Justice Consultants, amazing group.
TNT.
Yeah, shout out to TNT.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I recently have joined with them as a principal provincial offences instructor. They sort of had the monopoly on our campus special constable services. And the comparison I can say to really get full appreciation out to the officers of what they're walking into and just their articulation of how and why they're allowed to do what they do. The comparison I ride at very very much in our profession is this. Let's say, and not to negate the importance of someone working at Tim Hortons, because I go there a lot. But at Tim Hortons, if you put 3 creams in a coffee instead of 2, you spill the coffee out, you give it to the person. In our world, if you do something potentially you shouldn't have otherwise done to make a mistake, is it civil liability? Is it criminal liability? Right. So it's a whole certainly that more pressure, more scrutiny, all the more. So
yes, I see.
Right.
That's good, man. That's good. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, Brian Lass, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
You are a beacon of joy, is what I would call it.
Beacon of joy. So far, I've been called inimitable, which I had to look up, and now a beacon of joy, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here first. And how about a huge virtual round of applause for these fine gentlemen here on this amazing podcast?
Thank you,
I got to be honest. I saw this little setup online. I was very, very jealous because I just have like my curtain behind me when I do my YouTube videos, but now I'm here. I got pictures and everything. So
maybe collaborations down the road.
Absolutely, 100%.
Look, we're here to inspire all to level up.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
That's it. I like that. Inspire to level up.
Yeah.
Very nice.
All right, it was a pleasure.
Thanks very much, man.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Cheers.
Awesome.
All right.
This podcast is brought to you by Executive Protection Lifestyle Canada. Make sure to drop by next week and don't forget to subscribe.